Good evening. We've never done this before, so it does feel quite strange,
Aye.
given that we're being filmed, having a conversation with each other, and we know each other quite well, and sit next to each other at work and stuff like that. So it's weird doing this while we're being filmed. I'm Dan Wonders, so lecturer in mental health nursing, and I'm a mentalisation-based therapist.
And I'm
yourself.
I'm Scott McPherson, also a lecturer in mental health nursing and a CBT therapist. So we're here to talk about conversations, engagements, therapeutic engagement in particular. And we thought that might be useful for everyday engagement with people as well as professional engagement.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff we'll be talking about will be relevant to professionals in working in professional practice, and some of the language will be interchangeable. But like a lot of this stuff is just relevant to working with human beings in general. But I think we'll be able to make it clear when there are certain things that are just relevant for professionals and others that are relevant across the board and stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess some of the limitations of what we're going to do here is try and condense essentially some of our kind of highlights or what we think are some of the most important things in therapeutic practice over about 45 minutes, and then we'll have kind of 15 minutes for questions. But we could talk about this for hours and hours, and we talk about this all the time in our work and just generally.
So yeah, I think we'll think about where it can go wrong, where engagement with people can go wrong, and I guess some top tips for what we can do to try and engage better with people, to try and not just work better with people, but have better relationships with people.
Yeah. Good. Is that our intro?
I think so.
I think it is. Okay, so if we move on to our first slide, I guess. Humans. So maybe I don't know if it sounds daft that we would have to kind of start with that, but I think we maybe can sometimes forget the common humanity that each of us share. We can potentially kind of other people and see them as different rather than similar to us. So, I mean, on the slide, we've got kind of patient and professional being artificial social construct. So that's certainly something that's relevant for professionals in particular. And the little kind of cartoon we've got there, doctor, it hurts when I do this, do what? Exist. You know, I mean, that's something that we all share. Like, people are going to watch this and they're going to be looking for principles of therapeutic practice, but they're just going to leave with existential dread and like, oh, I've never thought about that before.
Maybe that's an important side note, is that we both studied philosophy. So
yeah,
we bring that to our practice.
Absolutely, but I think that's a weight that we all carry. We'll have a variety of experiences in life that will shape us in different ways, but what we all do share is that we're born into this world, and there's no clear rule book in terms of what you're supposed to do with your life. And that's actually, there's a lot of pressure involved in that in terms of figuring out, well, what's right, and even who am I? It's some really deep philosophical questions that we can carry with us.
It's made even more difficult by what's right or what's normal changing over time and in different places and stuff as well. What the idea that deviance is socially constructed as well. So what's considered deviant is a construct of a collection of minds.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, the human bit probably is particularly the most relevant for professionals. I guess in everyday conversation, you're not maybe seeing so much barriers between us. But I guess particularly I mean, we teach mental health nurses, so even you putting on a uniform and then working with somebody else, even your roles as like, I'm the nurse and you're the patient, these are things that they can divide us in some ways, and not certainly suggesting that we don't need to think about the boundaries in our professional roles and stuff like that, but we need to maintain boundaries while remember that there's more that connects us than separates us.
I mean, it changes the way people recognize that themselves, changes the way that we engage with people, doesn't it? We engage with someone who's wearing a uniform. It's different. It's immediately different than if we we're engaging with a policeman. If we met that guy out with a police uniform without knowing he was a policeman, or that woman without knowing she was a policeman, we would engage in a different way.
Yeah.
There's something about the power dynamic changes by the wearing of that uniform.
Yeah. And on the slide again, it says Irvin Yalom describing professional and patient as fellow travellers, and I really like that. I mean, Irvin Yalom's a kind of psychotherapist that's written some kind of seminal works, really accessible stuff as well, and really it allows us to kind of have true empathy. You know what I mean? We'll talk about that later on, but really thinking about someone else as well. It could be me sitting there, and this person could be in my seat as well, because these things are artificial social constructs.
Yeah, if we think of people as patients or as particular diagnoses, you know, as the addict, the personality disorder or whatever it is, then we're othering them. We're not truly thinking of them as a human, and then it changes the way we engage with them. It's difficult to give true empathy to engage with someone with empathy, if we're thinking about them in that way.
Yeah. And I think you do need some of that shorthand. You know, I mean, sometimes, I mean, we're quite critical of psychiatric diagnosis, and I think rightly so. Sometimes that shorthand can be useful to access treatment and stuff like that. Where it's really not useful is when you see a diagnosis and not seeing the person. So it's a person first. You know, I mean, to be truly person-centered, you take that person. You don't try and fit people into boxes. You kind of take that person at face value. Don't know, do you want to say anything else about that? It's maybe kind of, I know we're probably going to come back to that as well, and we're going to ramble through quite a few things, but
I think we're good to move on to the next slide.
So our next one was about all having different stories.
So yeah, like people experience the world and themselves and other people in different ways. We look at those things through different lenses, and misunderstandings can happen when we try and apply our own lens to other people.
Yeah.
So,
I think we do that naturally and without thinking. Is when we get in disagreements with other people, we can get frustrated and say, "Oh, why can't you see this?" You know what I mean? It's so obvious, because we do feel that everyone should see the world in the way that we see it. It's difficult to separate yourself from your own experience, and it takes an imaginative leap to kind of really imagine what it's like to be someone else and think about what they've been through and how that's contributed to where they are. But I mean, a variety of things can happen across the course of a life to essentially shape how you see the world. And thinking of like attachment theory and your relationships with your primary caregivers, and that builds up the internal working model. So it's the way you see yourself, the way you see other people, and the way you see how you fit in that as well. So where's your place in the world? And that's a powerful kind of template for what you expect from the world and where you think you should be. And based on that template, you'll interact with the world in a certain way. If you've kind of had experiences that essentially say that like people are generally untrustworthy, then you'll treat them as if they're untrustworthy, and rightfully so, and it'll make sense given your previous experience. But then other people that have maybe had quite secure attachments, then they'll find that confusing. I don't understand why you can't trust me, and then misunderstandings can happen based on that.
And it fits with the CBT idea around core beliefs and dysfunctional rules for living, and in negative automatic thoughts. So we form beliefs about the world, ourselves, and other people that we hold deeply, and then through those we develop rules for living. So people are horrible, or people are abusers, or all men are terrible, or whatever it is. And then the rule for living, I can't trust people, or I can't tell people my thoughts, my desires, my beliefs, because they'll use them against me.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we always like doing work on self and others as well. Think of the concept of mentalization. So mentalization is just essentially understanding people's behavior is based on mental states. So it's just never thinking about things as just being behavior. That's kind of one of the phrases that we really kind of quite loathe, because it removes a person from their context and their story. But we have to do a bit of mentalizing around, so what am I thinking, what am I feeling, like where's that coming from? So understanding our own story, that's the story that's unfolding in the moment, but then kind of previous story as well, and then trying to do a bit of imaginative work with other people as well, and like just that wondering, that restrained imagination. So I wonder what that person's thinking, I wonder what they're feeling, and I wonder where that's coming from, and trying to make sense of people inside their context rather than just kind of behavior that's removed from that.
I think that making sense of yourself or learning about yourself, that's really important, isn't it? Plato and what's his name that we always talk about? Socrates.
Yeah.
They said know thyself, didn't they? There was that discussion that they reckon that Socrates and Plato were kind of around at the time. It was probably the Delphic Oracle that said that thing, but they'd both kind of written about that, know thyself. And I was reading something the other day, and it was kind of backing up this idea that we learn, how do we learn more about ourselves? How do we get to know ourselves? It's through other people. Like, it's only possible through relations with other people. So we need that context of discussion with other people, engagement with other people, communication with other people.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, there's no just behavior. Everything we do is communication, isn't it? Like, when we speak, we're communicating. When we listen, we're communicating. When we sit and do nothing, we're communicating something. Everything is a communication.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you said about kind of not knowing about yourself, like without the experience of others and stuff as well. And I sometimes use that kind of thought experiment with students. You know what I mean? Imagine you're literally the only person on the planet Earth and you're wandering about. Like, how much are you going to know about yourself? Because it is like, because you get so much of it is through mirroring and feedback and stuff, and what people tell you. And because we end up internalizing a lot of that, that's our kind of mirror to who we are and where we kind of fit in the world.
Yeah, and then we shape ourselves, modify ourselves based on the feedback that we get from the world and other people.
Yeah, I mean, we're social animals, you know. I mean, a lot of what we do is driven by a desire to connect to other people, and certainly connection, something we'll emphasize today. I wonder if we've kind of covered most of that stuff that we're talking here, but
I guess maybe just to kind of, I don't know, maybe it's kind of going over that again, but like Beck, psychologist, and before him, Alfred Adler, talked about kind of, it's not situations that make us feel the way we feel, it's the meaning that we ascribe to those situations.
Yeah.
So like you and I could have the same experience, or the same thing could happen. We could both interpret that, but we interpret it through our own lens and our own experiences. So then you give it one meaning and I give it another meaning, and it leads to completely different behaviors or changes for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that meaning is massively influenced by your story and where you've come from, what you've been exposed to and stuff as well. All your attitudes are kind of come from that. The way you make sense of the world, absolutely. And even the way you make sense, I mean, don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but even the way you make sense of kind of greater things like spiritual things, or I mean, I've read some stuff about people's attachment relationships with God, like based on their early attachment experiences. So if they've had experiences with parents where they felt kind of neglected or abused and stuff, then they kind of see God as being like that as well, you know what I mean? As being like, these things that are happening to me, God's doing it to me because he doesn't like me or whatever. It's interesting.
It really fits with like what Adler was saying. Like he reckoned that everyone, like he didn't ascribe any particular religion or theological perspective to kind of his psychology, but he was saying that everyone is trying to be like God. Like, so he was saying like that's ultimately what we're aiming for. And I read that Maslow was like became a disciple of Adler, if you like. Like that's maybe enough of the religious notes. But,
let's get our robes on.
I know.
Just.
But he was saying that that's what we're all aiming for, is to try and be perfect, to try and be the best that we can be, and that's what Maslow was saying. We're aiming for self-actualizations, and we're kind of aiming to be the best person that we can.
Yeah. Aye, I'll save that for another webinar. I really want to go there actually, but
do one on spirituality.
Aye, yeah, we should. So we're all human, and we shouldn't forget that. But we all have completely different stories that lead us to the way that we see the world, the way we interact with it, and the way we feel.
And if we assume that we know why someone's doing something, if we're looking at their behaviour through our own lens, then there's real potential for getting it wrong, for misunderstandings, for disagreements, and for, in a professional sense, then a rupture in the relationship between the professional and the person we're working with, and even in personal relationships.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I'm as guilty of it as anybody else, I'm sure, maybe more so. Not always taking the time to try and understand, try and take a step back, decenter, and just say, wait a minute, what might that be about? What might be going on for that person? And instead just saying, that's what's going on, that's what they're doing, this is why they're doing that, they're doing that to annoy me or something.
Yeah. It's a bit of a shortcut, isn't it? And it's influenced by what we're feeling at the time often. But I mean, the most valuable thing, and we will go back to this, is a person feeling understood. It's what Carl Rogers said, kind of humanistic psychologist, that by a person being or feeling understood, you kind of almost bring them back into the human race. Because if you feel misunderstood, you feel kind of completely disconnected. You know what I mean? I'm having this experience and no one else gets it, and it's really a really isolating experience. But just to kind of, it's almost sort of the metaphor of the arms coming right and kind of bringing the person back into the human race, getting that connection again, just by understanding.
Like he was saying, being understood is the most basic of human needs, wasn't it? I guess it, again, maybe a bit of a tangent, but like in terms of suicide, I forget the guy's name, professor in California or something, he was talking about the essential components of kind of becoming suicidal, that you need to experience a thwarted sense of belonging, feeling that you don't belong in the world or amongst people anymore, and then and also then feeling like you're a burden on other people as well.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, Jimmy Smith.
Yeah.
So one of our favourite analogies that we use.
So we need the context for this. Someone sent me I think it was my brother sent me the video just because it's a funny video. But then we spoke about it and we watched it and then we thought about it and we thought maybe we can use that in teaching. Maybe that's a helpful metaphor for getting it wrong in professional client or patient relationships.
Yeah, I think it maybe comes from that. I guess we've worked with students for quite a few years and had that discussion about why you're doing what you're doing, and I guess thinking through what you're doing, and people saying that, I think I'm maybe just kind of naturally quite empathic. You know what I mean? I think I'm just good with that. And thinking that might be a good start, but then thinking like how natural is it, like all the therapeutic process?
Yeah, that's something we hear a lot, isn't it? People saying, I think I'm just naturally good at that, and I don't need to practice it because I'll just do it when I'm out there working with people. And then, I was going to say I always talk about a joiner, don't I? And I know nothing about joinery or carpentry, but so I would say, like,
my dad's a joiner actually, but
it should be you talking about it.
I know absolutely nothing about it. It's because I'm so crap at it, you know what I mean? At any time that I do that, he's just like, no, get out the way, you know what I mean? He removes me from the human race at that point, and he's like, let's the professional do it. But sorry, your joiner analogy.
Like we're in the business of training professional nurses. So what we want is people to be able to use the right skills at the right time in the right situations with the right people, and to have a tool belt, if you like, of skills, and to be able to select from that. So I assume when a joiner is being trained, they get trained to use particular types of tools for particular jobs, and not to use particular types of tools in a particular way with particular bits of wood so there's some skillful application of skills. It's probably not good enough just to say, I think I'm naturally a good joiner. I think I'll naturally know how to use the right tool. I'll know what tool to use and I'll know how to use it. I don't need to practice. I'll just go out there and do it. And when you go to try and when you get a job to build a staircase for Mr. Smith, you go round to his house and you've never practiced that before and you get it completely wrong, and then he's angry at you, then probably got little comeback because you haven't practiced it. You haven't been professional in your preparation.
Yeah.
So that's what this analogy is about. It's about thinking about being being a professional, being skilled. Yeah, maybe we should just.
Yeah. I mean, we could watch a video, but I guess like think of the people that are watching it for just everyday conversations as well. You know what I mean? It shouldn't just be professionals that are thinking about how you're
Yeah.
interacting with people that are struggling. You know what I mean? We all need to think about it, and sometimes that thinking can just be about thinking about what am I going through, how am I presenting myself, trying to see myself from the outside a little bit, trying to have that self-awareness and trying to empathize with somebody else's. Even that takes skill, because we can become overwhelmed really quickly and lose that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like at an extreme end of the scale, that could be that maybe you're having difficulty, maybe you're coming up against similar difficulties a lot of the time in your engagements with people, and maybe it's difficult to understand. It's been difficult to understand why you're having the same difficulties over and over again. So maybe that's stepping back and just saying, oh, wait a minute, what is that about? What is there anything that I can take responsibility for there? Is there anything that I could try and do differently? And maybe at a lower end of the scale, it's just about sometimes maybe you're not in a good mood, or you're preoccupied with something else, and maybe that's what's making it difficult. And stepping back allows you to say, okay, that didn't go as well as I'd hoped, or that went differently than I expected. What's that about? Okay, or maybe this is going on for me.
I think a nice way of explaining that kind of mentalizing activity is trying to see yourself from the outside, and kind of in terms of like, how was I experienced, and try to see the other person from the inside and say, like, I wonder what's going on for them as well. So we've got our video playing just now. So this is I feel like we're going to be commentating on it. It feels.
That's Jimmy Smith there with the mouth guard hanging out of his mouth. He so early 90s. Excuse the age of the video. He's fighting Tony Moscow.
It's seminal, so you can use it from the early 90s.
Yeah, it's out there in the public domain, this video. And so this guy, he was 33 years old. He'd had 3 amateur fights, tells you there, and he'd won them all. So it was looking good. Things were looking up for Jimmy. And this is his very first professional fight. There's Tony Moscow there. So Jimmy's about to see how he gets on in the professional world of boxing. So we can, anyone who's ever watched boxing before can see maybe immediately that's not what a boxer looks like. That's not the way he's moving his arms is a bit different.
And it is over very, very quickly. I was thinking about how much other stuff we could have said there, but he's down like a sack of tatties really quickly.
He's not.
But yeah, I mean, not only does it not look like he's boxed before, it kind of doesn't look like he's watched boxing before, or even thought about boxing or anything.
Yeah, and so important to say, we agonized over, like, the first time, and each time we use this video, we talk about it. We agonized. If you're watching Jimmy Smith, then this is important, because we said, like, can we use that video? Like, what if that was me, and I had one professional boxing fight, and that's how it went, and then that's
how it would go for you.
It would definitely, especially against that guy.
I think he could probably move better than you as well, though.
I wouldn't have lasted as long as Jimmy Smith lasted, that's for sure. But yeah, we said, like, what if that was us? Would we want that video to be watched again and again? And we both said the same thing, that actually we believe in the greater good for the greater number. So,
consequentialist argument of moral philosophy, yeah.
So we said, well, that thing has happened and there's no taking that away, and that exists in the public domain, that video anyway. So if something good was coming out of that, then probably be embarrassed about it, but would probably feel better about that something good was coming out of it. So what we're saying is that his knockout is an analogy for poor outcomes for people who haven't skillfully thought about or prepared for their interactions.
Yeah. There's a lot to think about, you know what I mean? If you're going to, whether you're trained to be a boxer or you're training to work therapeutically with people, or just want to increase the value of your kind of day-to-day conversations, there is a lot to think about. And I guess one of the key things in boxing is about the variety of moves or whatever, you know what I mean? Your posture, your movement, and your timing in particular, you know what I mean? At what point is it appropriate to, I guess, in the therapeutic process, to just listen? At what point do you need to say something? Do you need to say? There's a variety of things. I mean, certainly Jimmy Smith, it looked like he just kind of steamrollered into it a little bit, didn't probably think about it too much, and it certainly didn't end well for him.
Yeah, and I guess also important to say that we genuinely tried to find Jimmy Smith to ask him if we would be okay
I
with
don't
this.
know how hard we tried, because that maybe sounds like we went touring, like
Yeah, we didn't
across in a camper van.
We didn't go to the States where it said he was from, but we did search for him online. It was quite difficult. There was another Jimmy Smith at the time who had a more successful career, and it seemed possible to track him. But this Jimmy Smith seemed to disappear off the radar, and probably no real surprise there, given how poorly.
I'm not sure how much the webinar audience are interested in Jimmy Smith, but
no,
it's
I feel like I need to say that for me, because I genuinely feel bad about using that video. If he's not happy about that, then like I want to.
I guess that's us showcasing that. Try to see people from the inside, you know what I mean? Doing that imaginative leap and try to imagine what it is like for Jimmy Smith, absolutely. But I mean, like you say, we do use the analogy a lot, and we've used it with a variety of group of students now, to get us into the way of like thinking critically about it, because actually therapeutic practice, working with somebody, it's just a conversation, and it can appear effortless. I think it can appear effortless, but it's not, because you have to really think about it. And I think that's what we emphasize with people, is you really need to be thinking about everything, like the whole context around your interaction and what you're doing and what you're saying, and the timing of that and everything that goes with that.
That's right. And if it's not hard work, and if you're not preparing well for it, and you don't feel skilled for it, then you're probably not doing it right. It needs to be tough work. You need to be working hard to be there with the person, to be trying to understand all the time, to be listening hard. And if you're not, then you're Jimmy Smithing it. We coined that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we do like that. And I think there is potentially a lot of Jimmy Smithing it out there, because there are times where I guess, I mean, we would admit that there's times where we stop thinking. Because we're fallible, because we're human, you know what I mean? We're all humans. And maybe should have said that at the start as well, you know what I mean? We'll have a maybe set of values or set of standards that we'd hold ourselves to, but sometimes we maybe won't meet them, you know what I mean? Like if I'm working as a therapist, I'm not as good if I'm really tired or really stressed, for example. So we need to mentalize ourselves at that moment in time and think, right, what's going on for me here? Why am I not kind of working as effectively as I normally am?
You do know this is being recorded, and you've just said that you're fallible. People are going to see that.
I don't think for a minute that people are out there thinking that I'm anything else other than that. So that's absolutely fine. I couldn't be congruent otherwise. All right, will we move on? Oh, we're taking far too long talking about this. It's past.
Is it really?
Aye. We should add a couple of beers in that as well. And, you know what I mean? Red dressing gowns, cigars, fire on.
I think like Will Ferrell's character, Wedding Crashers. You seen that? He's sitting in like a red dressing gown. He shouts on his mum and stuff. Anyway,
okay.
Let's move on.
Aye, okay. We'll try and smash this in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So therapeutic relationships are unique. So they are like no other, right? So what it says there, service users may open up more than they have ever done with anyone else in their lives, and we need to really pay attention to that, really respect the power of that. Like even within our social relationships, I mean, I'm worried because this is being recorded and stuff now, but like there's stuff that I wouldn't be comfortable like saying to my wife at home and stuff. There's stuff that I want to keep kind of to myself, but if I was in a protected space, you know what I mean, where I know, right, I'm going to work with this person for a certain amount of time, I can say this, and I don't need to go home and like look them in the eye every day, you know what I mean? There's something really sacred about that space, and we've had that conversation before in that, I mean, she works as a CBT therapist and I do MBT, and that like what happens in the room is really intense sometimes, and that doesn't just have to be in therapy. It could be working as a nurse, working in any kind of the human professions, or even in a general kind of conversation as well. But if somebody's going to open up with something to you, then you need to really respect that.
Yeah, you find yourself in that really privileged position of someone sharing something with you that they've never shared with anybody in their life. And then what do you do with that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so we need to respect that. And I guess we're talking about the importance of thinking about what you do. Certainly not Jimmy Smith in it, thinking about what you're going to do. But we've moved away from thinking about specific therapies so much, like over the last few years, and we've kind of done that with our teaching as well. And I think like even maybe 3 years ago or something, like a lot of modules were structured in terms of like, here's CBT, here's MBT, here's motivational interview, and here's this, and really looking at these things as separate. And they do have different kind of maybe different functions. It might be better for different things. But that's what we'd call the content. So the content would be like a model that you're using. So the focus of your discussions, like a specific therapy. And we can think about them as like things that you are used to kind of give a conversation edges. And it's useful to have edges at times, you know what I mean? Because you want to be going somewhere. But the most powerful thing and the most effective thing is actually the process. So that's the therapeutic relationship, and that's the how it happens. So and I think that was evidenced in our conversations early on. We're talking about you're doing CBT, I'm doing MBT, but actually we're doing probably 70% of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And just being, you know what I mean, open, honest, congruent, delivering empathy, and establishing trust.
Yeah, working collaboratively with the person and treating the person as an equal and an important voice. Yeah. I think that was important. Like I didn't know anything really about MBT when before I met you. But yeah, as we discussed it, we were like, actually, we're doing a lot of the same thing. Some of the stuff just has different words to describe it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mentalizing, decentering, kind of similar. Yeah.
And absolutely, and I think that the model, while some of that can be useful, it would never work without the pro stuff, without the relationship. So that's what we're kind of going to talk about. I mean, I'm going to keep an eye on time now because I think I'm better at that than you.
Much better.
But I mean, essentially, evidence is showing that the process is the most important part of therapeutic engagement. So, and we'll say that to our students. It's not like, don't think that you need to become a CBT therapist to be able to do useful work with people, because it's all about the relationship. So we're going to talk about essentially the key kind of principles in that.
Yeah, there's some research that I read that was saying that that the relationship component accounts for 70% of the useful change in people in therapy, where the specific factors of a therapy account for only up to 8%. So quite a massive difference there. And then the other stuff, the 22% that's missing, is accounted for variables in a person. So just the other stuff that happens out with therapy, the stuff that they bring as a person to therapy.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Cool. Should we talk a little about the core conditions and then go into the basics as well? So
yeah, so if we go back to the core conditions slide, that's it.
Yeah. So so the process stuff. This is what ties it all together. So someone's just knocking at the door. They're obviously desperate to get into our webinar. People are all lost, you know what I mean, and they really want to know the secrets of therapeutic practice, but they're here. So empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. So Carl Rogers argued that to have a therapeutic relationship, to do any kind of therapeutic work, you needed these three. Any one of these that were missing, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So that's what we're going to think about for a second.
I mean, he was the father of person-centered therapy. But all evidence-based therapies now use these principles as well. So these are important basic principles for engaging with people.
So empathy, just trying to, doing that imaginative leap, you know what I mean, try to connect with another person's experience, try to see the world as they see it. I'm thinking of some of Wiseman's work as well, Teresa Wiseman, who kind of broke down nursing into broke down empathy into 4 components.
She was a nursing academic.
Yeah. I wonder where I was going with that. So it's taking a person's perspective, staying out of judgment, come to that as well.
Recognizing or trying to identify the emotion that the person might be experiencing, and then communicating
that
so
understanding,
checking out if you've got it right.
Yeah, and I think like recognizing the emotion is really important when you think about empathy. Sometimes people misunderstand it in terms of, oh, I have to have experienced exactly what that person's experienced to be able to truly connect with it. But even two people can experience the same thing and still experience stuff differently. So it's just about recognizing, doing that imaginative leap. Imagine if that was me, then I'd be feeling like this. Is that, you know what I mean? Doing a bit of that checking out. Unconditional positive regard, staying out of judgment. I think a lot of people, it's quite a controversial one and people misunderstand it quite a lot as well. So unconditional positive regard is complete positive regard for the person without conditions. But
so in terms of unconditionally considering them a human worthy of your attention, your care, your listening.
Yeah. And that means you might work with people that have done things that really go against your values, and that's fine. And it's certainly not about saying that you have to give up your values. But what unconditional positive regard would say is that it's about you accept the person, you don't have to accept the behavior in terms of what they're doing. And you can often understand the behavior when you think about the story. So when you go back to it, we all have different stories. Think about that person and what's led them to the behavior or whatever that you find kind of goes against your values.
And sometimes it's maybe difficult or impossible to do that. Like I was thinking, like when I was a student, worked with a guy who I was absolutely fine with. He seemed like a nice guy, and then I found out another member of staff actually said to me, "Why are you nice to that guy? Go and read his notes." And then I read his notes, and it said that he was a paedophile or he'd committed crime, he'd abused children. Like looking back now, I got it completely wrong. I treated that guy differently, unfavorably, avoided him, and that must have been difficult for that guy to understand, or maybe not. Maybe he guessed. He must have read my notes, or somebody told him, or something. But I didn't do that thing that you're just talking. I didn't manage to separate the behavior from the person. And I think looking back, I'm not even sure that I tried.
Yeah.
To be honest, if I had tried, I think I would have been able to get to a place where I'd understood that behavior. But still, what I should have done is try and separate the person from it and say, well, okay, that was the behavior. Here's the person that I'm experiencing. Let's just stick with that.
Yeah. Again, we could go into miles of depth with all these, but we'll kind of bash on. Incongruence is essentially genuineness is probably an easier way, more descriptive way of kind of getting that across. But just having, how does your outer expression fit with your inner experience? And I think people are really quick to recognize when you're not being authentic. I mean, I'm sure anyone that's watching the webinar or watching online can reflect when somebody's just not quite connected with what someone said. There's someone saying that they're sorry, they're barking at you. I'm really sorry, you're just gonna have to wait. And you're like, doesn't, like the words sorry sounds like you're sorry, but the way you've articulated it hasn't. And I think I was using a good example recently in that, like, loads of kids that were coming to our house for Halloween. And it was like a big line of them, and they were telling these really, really rubbish jokes. You know what I mean? They get out of crackers from the year before, and my wife was saying, "That was a good one." You know what I mean? For everyone, and it's like it just stings of kind of like really, because what she's thinking about is onto the next kid and just giving them a sweetie and just kind of getting that done. And she's not meaning that there were good ones. I can guarantee there was no good jokes out of like maybe 100 kids that came at the door.
Where are you getting these Halloween crackers?
No, I was thinking that they were saved up from Christmas crackers. That's the
They were telling
joke for
Christmas
that.
jokes.
No, they were Halloween jokes, but some of them, yeah. All right, okay. Maybe I didn't think through the analogy that well.
No, sorry.
That's fine.
I've derailed that.
Yeah, but it's like people don't connect with it at all. And I felt it, and I'm sure they did as well. So we need to be congruent. We need to think about what we're actually feeling on the inside, and how do we actually wear that as well, because people can see through it.
And sometimes people get that a little bit wrong and think that congruence means just being yourself. So that means that, like we were saying earlier, just being yourself, just relying on being naturally good at stuff isn't good enough if you're going to be a professional who works in the caring professions. So it's something different from that. It's being yourself, but also being a skilled professional and using the right skills at the right time, the right tools at the right time. So moving on to the next slide.
We've got 5 minutes left. We're going to be really rushing here and stuff, so I don't I guess we don't want to
to devalue it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll maybe arrange to come back and do something else. Just putting ourselves forward for that at this time.
But yeah, we made a list of, or Dan more accurately made a list of
credit where credit's due.
Some key principles and considerations for when we're engaging with people. So, well, first one that we've got on the slide is about thinking about the environment, thinking about where you're having the conversation. Does that lend itself to having a useful conversation with someone?
Yeah.
Does it take account of the person's privacy needs? Maybe seen some horrible examples of doctors just pulling curtains around a bed and then having really private conversations with people who've tried to kill themselves, for instance, and expecting somehow that a curtain around a bed is going to stop other people from protecting.
Thinking about sometimes having a job as a nurse escort, like showing up at someone's house with an ambulance behind you and Mental Health Act detention papers in your hand, and thinking about what that does to the interaction already before you've even said anything. That's already kind of set a tone to it. Using open questions, I think, is really valuable. So closed questions will get a kind of yes or no. So the difference between did you sleep well, yes or no, or like how did you sleep? You're going to get a lot more from that. So you want to be exploring. Thinking about avoiding the word why can be kind of quite infuriating. Sometimes the word why is like, but I don't know why. Just gently kind of probing, what's that about?
Yeah, and then clarifying content with people, like we said before, checking it out. Have I got this right? This is what I think I'm seeing. Or I think you said this. Or when we're rewording stuff for people, is that how it is for you?
Yeah.
Making sure we're on the same page, creating that mutual trust, that mutual understanding.
Yeah. You've only got a representation of someone's experience, so you need to make sure that that's right.
Yeah.
Consider your timing. So, I mean, it fits really well with Jimmy's analogy. You know, I mean, consider it when it's appropriate just to sit with something, when it's appropriate to do something. And review your toolkit. You know, I mean, we're thinking about being therapeutic practitioners and stuff. There's a variety of things we can do. So we need to think what's most appropriate just now. Is it just communicating empathy, or is it something else that I need to do?
Yeah. And then using silence, something that we've not been good at in the last few minutes because we're racing through it, but spending time just being there with the person, just being present with the person, letting the person speak. You know, for me, if I'm upset or angry or something, nothing worse than somebody jumping in and making it about them. I just want the person to listen. I don't want advice. I don't want them changing it to about them. Just want the person to be.
And it often comes from a good place, doesn't it? But it's not necessarily perceived as helpful. There are certainly a few grey areas, particularly like self-disclosure, particularly in professional relationships. So how much of yourself do you reveal to other people? The use of humour and the use of touch. We could talk for hours about these things, but I think just emphasising that these are not things that we should be avoiding. You know what I mean? We should be avoiding talking about ourselves at all. It's just about carefully considering what you're sharing and why you're sharing it.
Yeah, so it should always be for the benefit of the person. We don't share it in a professional relationship to meet our own needs. It has to be something we select that carefully, making sure that it's useful. We think it's useful for the person.
Yeah, and then check out how useful it's been as well. You know what I mean? Look at the response of it. And finally, resisting the righting reflex. So there is a tendency to want to fix people's problems. And I feel it all the time when I'm working with people and working with students. And I'm like, I want to take this away for you. I know you're feeling horribly about it.
A really human thing, isn't it? To try and take that pain away from someone.
And there is a tendency to people's default. I mean, we notice it with students when they do simulation, is they kind of fall back into trying to advice giving or trying to kind of list different things that somebody could do, and that can be quite kind of invalidating and stuff as well. So if you say you're distressed, and we always use, have you tried going for a walk, Scott? You know what I mean? You feeling that? Have you just tried? Have you thought about going for a walk? Why don't you go for a walk? And if it was as easy as just fixing people's problems like that, then people probably wouldn't have half the problems that they've actually got.
Empty hospitals and
absolutely. So it's not that simple. So we need to recognise that the righting reflex it's actually about my need when I'm working with somebody rather than anyone else, because I feel helpless in not being able to fix it.
Our own discomfort in that feeling unhelpful, we want to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
And also, Dan and I wrote a short piece for local paper on that fairly recently, didn't we? So
I think there's links to that at the end and stuff as well. Final point was really around hope that we can talk about briefly, but essentially without hope, there's a bit of a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, you know what I mean, where your attitudes in terms of people's recovery and how much better they can get actually influence the outcomes. If I can share that really quickly, you know, I mean, the famous experiment was psychologists going into a school and saying that, right, this half of the class are brilliant, they're really gifted. This half of the class are, you know, I mean, they try hard, but they're not actually going anywhere. And what happened at the end of the year was the guys that the school teachers were told were better did better. There was actually no statistical variation in terms of their performance before that point. It was just that because the teachers believed more in the people that they were working with, that they did better because they invested more time in them, and they actually gave up on the other people as well. So the importance of hope, we can't underestimate that. And if we lose hope, then we need to do mentalizing in ourselves and stuff, and saying, what's happened with me and my understanding of this person, you know what I mean? Am I potentially looking at a diagnosis instead of the person? Where's that stereotype or that stigma come from?
And then in the professional context, we can use clinical supervision or supervision, not necessarily for us as mental health nurses, it's clinical supervision, but we can use that to help us think about that sort of thing. What's going on for me? Why am I finding this more difficult working with this person? Maybe the hope, maybe it's about hope, maybe it's about loss of hope. What can I do about that?
Yeah. I know we've had to rattle through there. I mean, I guess we've got a soft sell of our kind of mental health movie monthly.
Yeah, if you want to hear more from us, but it's not just about hearing from us. It's not about that at all. But if you just want to engage with us, or you want to just come and watch a film, or you're just hungry and you want some free food, come along. We show a film one Monday a month.
Yeah, it is. And the basic idea is people don't talk about mental health as much as they should, but film's a nice, easy, accessible way into those conversations. So what we do is we show a film and we have an intermission in the middle, eat some food, and then at the end we just say, what do you think, what do you feel, and we have a conversation about mental health. And we open it up to everyone.
That's
so it's open to the public.
That's a brilliant thing about it, is it's completely free. It's open to absolutely everyone. You can come along, you can talk as much as you want, or you can come along and not talk at all. There's no pressure at all. It's just an open forum.
Yeah, so anyone's absolutely welcome to come along to that. Yeah, and we had some further reading there as well. So we've written quite a few things together, and we've kind of got some references and stuff up there.
Yeah, if you want to read any of those things, then I don't know if you can click through those links to get
Yeah, I mean, even if I guess our emails are but at the start and stuff, and
you can give us a shout.
Yeah, people can email us, get in touch. You would find us on Google if you Google our names in RGU and stuff as well.
We've prattled on enough.
So we'll see if there's any questions now.
Oh, thank you very much, guys. It was such an interesting topic. It's like I don't actually have any experience with the mental health, although my whole family does mental health. I'm the first one to get out. So if you do have any questions, guys, can please get used to type them in the wee box. You'll find the box at the bottom right hand corner, with the wee speech bubble. So just type in there so we can all see the questions. That'd be great. But while we wait for you guys to type a question, I do have one of my on my own. So as I said, someone without any mental health experience. However, I get told, and you might hear this a lot, but I have that face where people could just talk to. So I actually change my hairdressers every so often because my hairdresser tends to tell me a lot of personal stuff about herself, and it happens quite often. So because I have that face of people willing to tell me all their personal details, like personal stuff, what's the best thing that I could do in that situation? So when they start telling me about how, I think there was one case where a woman just her mother had cancer, and she started telling me all about all of her these issues and how she was coping with it. I had no idea what to do. What should I do?
Depends what you want to do with it, I suppose. If you don't want people to tell you those things, then change your body language. Probably because you have. I was thinking probably because you have really open body language that people feel comfortable talking to you. That you give good eye contact, stuff like that.
I was thinking about it. I mean, I have that experience going to the hairdresser quite a lot as well, and people do want to share a lot of that stuff. I was thinking.
All right, so this is all about hairdressers. People who go to hairdressers.
No. I was thinking so sometimes we can talk about the environment, how it influences. So if me and Scott were in a therapy session or something just now, this can be quite intense for people. So like the eye contact and stuff like that. So sometimes people actually going for a walk and talk or something like that can be a bit less threatening. People can open up more. And I was thinking about if someone is cutting your hair, there's a bit of kind of distraction there, and the eye contact's not necessarily direct. So I was wondering, it actually makes it easier. So I do wonder if it's not necessarily about your face, but it's about the activity that makes it easier for people to open up. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
and I think that point that we were talking about before, just listening. If you're okay with people sharing that stuff with you, and if it's about what's a useful way to respond, or what's a nice way to respond, then I think just listening and maybe just reflecting some of the stuff that the person said back, because the most useful, they reckon that self-efficacy is the most useful things, isn't it? That we come to our own understandings through our discussions with people. And if I shared something with Dan, or if I was the hairdresser and I was cutting, because it's ridiculous the other way around. So if I'm cutting Dan's hair and I'm sharing stuff with him, then if he tells me what to do about that, it's much less useful than if he reflects back some of what I've said, maybe summarizes it, paraphrases it, and then I come to my own understandings through that bouncing back off of him. That's much more useful for me.
Yeah. I mean, just listening. I mean, that's what I do most of the time, is just listen and kind of, I guess, validate some of a person's experience. Just try and listen with empathy and try and communicate that back. Because we can't do anything else, and I think that's maybe one of the things that we need to get across here. Even as professionals, we can't really do anything else.
Yeah.
Other than, like, we can't fix it for people. We can't, like, essentially take control of a person's life and fix it in that way. They have to be able to do stuff by themselves.
Maybe
to feel understood. I mean, that's a first step.
Yeah, and also like verbalizing our own mental state. So if someone tells us something, like your hairdresser says, "My mum's got cancer," and tells you all about that, and if you feel really like, I don't know what to even say about that, then you can say that, and we say that in our practice. Like that sounds really tough. Like, I imagine that's really difficult, or even just that's left me a bit stunned. Like, it's left me lost for words.
If you're having that internal dialogue, or there are no words that are going to make this better, just say that. I mean, I can't imagine there's anything that I could say that would make that better. But what are you feeling? Just open it up a bit.
See, I think that works a lot better for me, because my first reaction is to go for an inappropriate joke.
Have you heard the one about the woman with cancer?
I think I automatically just try and lighten the mood. Obviously, it's with a very inappropriate joke. So I think that's much better. Go just turn around and be like, "I'm sorry to hear that. Anyway, you've seen the weather," kind of. Change the topic, but be empathetic at the same time. Which, again, it's a bit of a struggle for me, but I'll work on it, guys. But I do have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
So sometimes you can also look at this on the iPad if you use
Okay. Do you want us to do it?
Technology here. So your first one is from
Christy.
Prasath.
Oh, sorry.
So you might have to get.
Okay, so.
Oh, and I will just let because Chloe's also asked a question about with sharing the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Are you guys okay with me sharing the PowerPoint with people?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, fine.
Perfect.
So Prasath, I hope I pronounced that correctly. So your question is, I don't know if it's a question. Sometimes it's difficult to consistently maintain a therapeutic relationship in an environment with people harassing each other over nationality, age, position, etc. in extreme cases. Thoughts for tackling such situations? Consistently maintaining a therapeutic relationship in an environment where people are harassing each other.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that refers to like staff working together that are finding it difficult to maintain relationships or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm clear on that. So, because the therapeutic relationship is between the professional and the person who's seeking help or who's there for help. So, is that about something in between those people?
Yeah, I was wondering. I mean, if it is, so if there's, I guess, culture and stuff coming in between you and that person, then I guess it's doing that, some of that mentalizing and thinking like, what's this about? You know what I mean? So talking about behavior as communication. So where is this coming from? Where's this coming from in terms of your context and your story? What are you trying to communicate with that in the present? What is that about? That's probably what I would want to do. I mean, I think these we talk about ruptures in the therapeutic relationship as challenges, but they're also like golden opportunities to actually learn, like, what's this about? You know what I mean? Does does this kind of rupture, does that happen with other people as well? You know what I mean? You can take that learning from that interaction, that can be applied in other situations as well. So I think maybe that's a way to answer that, is to try and explore what it's all about for each person.
Stepping back as a professional and saying, what is it? Is there something about me that's causing this? Is there a lesson there for me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so easier question from Chloe. From Lana. Where do I find info on Movie Monthly? Okay, so we're on Twitter and Facebook. You can Google Mental Health Movie Monthly. On one of the slides, it has our Twitter handle, which is at RGUMHMM, and the Facebook address. I don't know if I don't use Facebook. Is that what you call it on Facebook?
Yeah, RGU Mental Health Movie Monthly under that and stuff as well.
So what I'll do with this one is I can easily share the Facebook page of the movie monthly with you guys. But what I'll say is there's quite a few views here that I don't actually have on my list. You've just kind of found this somehow, which is great. So if you also want a recording of this, can you send me your email addresses, and I'll make sure you get the list of the email addresses, this and the movie monthly as well. I'll just type my email address in just now, but I'll let you guys carry on.
Cool. Or you can contact us. Our details are on the first slide as well.
Yeah.
So Christy says,
hi, Christy.
Hi, yeah. I don't so much have a question, but I think you raise an important point in how we should be reflecting on those things which challenge our capacity for empathy. Oh, it's moved.
Oh, sorry, it was me.
No, that's fine. Also, what took me a while to learn, which is sort of explored in Rogers in Necessary and Sufficient Conditions, is that having empathy is just one part. Expressing empathy in a way that others can receive it is an additional and arguably even more important factor. Sometimes when you feel empathy, you can assume others sense it. But like you say, you don't have to make that effort in the relationship to communicate and express it. Apologies for the long comment. No need to apologize.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. So, I mean, I did some research a few years ago about the use of mentalization-based skills in acute mental health wards, and one of the key things to come out of that was people's communication of empathy. So it's not that thinking that like all staff nurses working in wards have no empathy, but I think we sometimes forget about, I guess, our congruence and what we're wearing on the outside. So we're kind of so rushed, we're so stretched, we're pulled in a million different directions, and we forget to communicate that empathy. We might be feeling it, but unless we communicate it, then there is the potential that a person is left with that uncertainty. So whatever we don't say, there's a potential for people to tell different stories with it. So I mean, that's why we always emphasize the value of communicating what you're thinking and what you're feeling. So making your own mental state transparent, so there's no room for misunderstandings, because it's so easy to misunderstand other people on a day-to-day basis. And if you don't communicate the empathy back, then there is always the potential that you're perceived as not caring. So even if you do care, people might perceive you as not caring.
I think it goes back to that point as well about like everything we're doing is communication. So like it's not just about what we say, but it puts me in mind of there's a George Bernard Shaw quote that I'll probably bastardize, but there's something like the most important problem in communication is the illusion that it has happened. And so we can think that the way we're with someone communicates empathy, but unless we say it as well, some people won't understand that, and they, through their own lens, like you were saying, they'll interpret it in a different way. They'll think, actually, he was just bored, or he's just nodding to get rid of me, or whatever it was. Okay, and Debbie says, what's your biggest challenge in facilitating to students to develop the level of skill required, and what would you want to do that would give you more scope to do this?
Time. I think like I always feel a huge amount of pressure in trying to craft these student nurses, allow them the space to grow within 3 years, given that I guess we only get 50% of the time with them as well, because 50% are in practice.
Not even 50%. So students are in university for 50% of the time, but with us or with the mental health team for a small fraction of that. So time's a massive issue. I wonder if that's something that people who are not mental health nurses or not nurses don't realize, is that actually the amount of time that like a mental health nursing student spends with mental health lecturers, it's actually a tiny proportion of their.
So I was thinking, I mean, the way our course is going to change, but just now we've got maybe like 7 weeks to get mental health in first year, and then 8 weeks in second year, and then 12 weeks in third year, and that's it. And that's it. I mean, I know our course is going to change, and we're always going to be kind of trying to improve it, but and it's difficult because we're thinking of people needing a variety of nursing skills. It's not just communication. There's a lot of, I guess, task-based stuff that with physical health care that is involved in that as well. Yeah, and I don't know.
But we're not all about moaning.
No,
like
no.
What we do, I think, is we try and model. We try and be congruent. I think we be who we are. We try and use these principles in our teaching. We try and use our skills in the way we teach. And I think we were talking earlier about sometimes students recognizing that and comment on that in class and saying, actually, we see you reflecting, we see you empathizing with people, we see you using these skills that you're talking about.
So, I mean, if we're teaching people how to build relationships, then we need to have good relationships with them. And I think we do. I think we do, because we are both quite transparent. We are kind of congruent, and we do a lot of communicating our own mental states in the room and stuff. And even when we're getting it wrong and stuff, and we are, admit our faults and don't pretend to know everything about everything. And I think that's important. It's kind of stepping out the expert role, because we do not, like, if someone had all the answers, they'd be rich. None of us have all the answers, because every single human is unique. So there's not sort of one set of answers that's going to fit all. So it's just about working with people to try and find that. But yeah, I think probably building relationships and that role modeling is probably maybe even the most important thing we do.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so Chloe says, I've had comments from colleagues questioning why an individual we work with opened up to me about things and not anyone else. This has caused some tension. How do you explain this to them? Is this a common experience?
Yeah, that's
we heard that in class today, actually, from someone else as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
It is a common experience. Yeah.
I mean, there might be something in it. I mean, I guess it's again doing some of that mentalizing about the context of the interaction and the relationships that are between them. So why has somebody chosen to open up? Is it about the particular time? Is it about the particular person?
And sometimes, I'm not sure, Chloe, what kind of role you work in, but what we talked about in class today was sometimes colleagues can see that as you're being you could be criticised for being inappropriately involved with the person, or you're splitting the team, or the person splitting the team by just going to you because you're a soft touch or stuff. These sort of horrible conceptualizations of what's happening, when actually maybe you're just you're really open. They feel safe speaking to you for whatever reason.
I mean, I think it's all, like Irvin Yalom would say, grist for the mill. I mean, it's all stuff that's actually worth talking about with people. So I'm really glad that you opened up to me, but I'm wondering why you're opening up to me and you're not opening up to other people, because there'll be an experience there. And generally, it's just kind of people navigate the social environment. They find some people more approachable than others, and we do have to do a bit of work around that and trying to kind of figure that out. I do think that sometimes in environments, so I think I've pictured that, and I think I've probably been that nurse before, where people have opened up to me and not to others, and maybe potentially other people think, I guess, oh, why are you special, or maybe even think, oh, what's wrong with me that person's not opening up with me. So maybe that comes from a place of defensiveness and thinking, what's wrong with me? It must be, no, maybe it's something that you're doing wrong rather than me. There's a bit of kind of defensiveness there. So I think talk about why somebody's approached rather than someone else. Try and make sense of it, and share that with the team as well. Try and get us all being better rather than
find out what
closing that down.
What does the person value about that engagement with you? Okay, and Kirsty says, I know you said about the importance of silence and giving the person time to think, but is there an amount of time that is too long to sit in silence?
I think, like, everyone's very different. Like I'll probably mark a silence. Like I think we get good at silence because we talk to like lectures, lecture theatres full of people and ask questions, and sometimes people are scared to put their hands up. So that's probably actually added to our ability to do it. But if I'm with somebody in a therapeutic context and the silence feels too long, and I think we're all good at judging that within ourselves. We've got different thresholds for it.
I think
I'll
also
sometimes mark it.
Sometimes we're reading the person's body language as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
But we're always looking for the cues that actually this is uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
we're looking for those cues within ourselves, but also within the other person.
I mean, I think something that I've used quite a lot is a bit of humour, you know what I mean, in terms of, is this a comfortable silence or an uncomfortable silence? You know what I mean? Just marked it in that way, just try to, or even, again, being transparent with my mental state. I deliberately left that silence because I thought you were maybe going to say something there, but I noticed you've not, so shall I keep asking questions, or where are we? You know what I mean? Just constantly checking it out.
Yeah.
Because it's complex, it's a very spontaneous process. Yeah.
I think that's it for questions.
I think it is. I do see that Anna is typing a question, but what I'll do is I'll just kind of do a quick thank you just now, because that is the end of our session. I've just put that slide back up with both Dan and Scott's details on there, so if you do want to get in contact with them, their email addresses are there. I have put my own email address in the chat as well, just because I said there's quite a few of you who I don't actually recognise from the Eventbrite page. So if you do want a copy of this recording or information on the movie monthly. I feel it's
mental health movie monthly.
I feel it's a bit of a tongue twister. Mental health movie monthly.
Yeah.
Then you can send myself an email, or again, obviously you guys run it, so they'll know as well. But thank you very much, guys, for coming along and joining me today and talking about the therapeutic engagement. It was very, very interesting. And guys, you all heard it as well. They've very agreed to come back to do another session. So
we did it. We would rush through a lot of stuff, and I kind of feel bad about that because we might have wanted to do more of that. So I mean, we like talking to each other, and we do that all the time anyway. So yeah, we would be happy to do that.
So I will get them back to join us in the new year for our next session. This is actually our last webinar of this side of the year. We'll be back up and running come January, so please look out for our next webinar series where we will have Dan and Scott back with us. So thank you very much, guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Will do. Thank you.